Wow, this ride is amazing so far. I don't want it to end. Oh, never mind. Have you ever wondered why there is that big piece of straight track on Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America? Well, I sure have. And if you clicked on this video, then you probably have too. And to be honest, this really puzzles me. And I really had to think about it to determine the cause of why they put just a straight piece of track in there. Because honestly, it looks kind of ridiculous. Before we get into that, I want to address all of the other straight track found on this coaster, because there is a lot of it. And this layout appears to be very stretched out. So on this coaster, you climb up your lift hill and plummet down your drop like just about any other coaster. You go into a pretty drawn out, kind of turn, and then into straight track. Now it's a very short section of straight track, but it's still there. You then go over an airtime hill and then head into even more straight track. And then you lightly ascend into a helix. This helix is extremely drawn out, and there is very little banking to the track. And after you exit the helix, you head into the dreaded piece of straight track that seems to keep going, and going, and going, and going, and you finally hit an airtime hill. Next up, we have even more straight track, before heading into another super drawn out helix, before finishing off with two bunny hills. Now, I have not gotten the opportunity to ride this coaster, but from the looks of it, it appears to be pretty decent. But why so much straight track? Because there is a lot of it. After I thought a little bit about it, here's what I've come up with. I believe that the most likely reason why there is so much straight track is that Six Flags wanted to keep the reduction costs low. Because the higher you get off the ground, the more expensive building the coaster becomes. And this coaster stays pretty low to the ground, which can make for a really fast feeling sensation. And it will help Six Flags keep the cost as low as possible. And at the time that Six Flags was building this was probably a W for them. Because they wanted a roller coaster over 200 feet, like a hypercoaster. But they probably didn't have the budget to build like a B&M Hyper per se. So they had to go with almost a scaled back version of an Intamin Hyper. And to keep production costs as low as possible, they probably felt it was easier to keep the extensive amount of straight track rather than adding in a bunch of airtime hills, because that would have ultimately made the cost greater. Another reason I could see that may or may not have affected this was the ride experience. There's a chance that Six Flags wanted a ride that was easier to enjoy for everyone, and they wanted it to be less intense. Now, I'm not saying bunny hills are intense or anything, but a back-to-back series of bunny hills might not be very comfortable for a lot of people. Now, I definitely feel like this is a much less likely scenario, because it almost feels a little silly to include so much straight track without a reason. And I just feel like that the most likely scenario has to be to keep costs low. It really is the only logical reason that I could come up with, because just about anything else seems a little too far-fetched. And honestly, it just doesn't make sense. Now, the straight track on the rest of the coaster appears to be manageable, and not super noticeable. And the more drawn out layout should help the ride to be a little less intense, which helps everyone to enjoy the ride more comfortably. Now, us coaster enthusiasts would love to see a more intense coaster. But remember, theme parks are businesses, and sometimes the biggest, baddest, and most intense coaster is not always the right choice. And honestly, it might have been smart for them to include so much straight track to keep the ride experience a little more tame and a lot more comfortable. And again, I haven't had the chance to ride this. I'm just going off the POV and doing the best I can. But it still logically makes sense that maybe a little less intense ride is better. So that addresses the more drawn out layout and the small sections of straight track found throughout the coaster. And honestly, it shouldn't be too noticeable mid-ride, and I think it's okay. But we have yet to address the elephant in the room, that super long section of straight track that appears to go on forever. And the reason for that piece of straight track is not the same as the straight track for the rest of the coaster, which is kind of surprising. So what I'm trying to say is that piece of straight track is not due to keeping the cost low or trying to make a more comfortable ride experience, because there's a completely different reason. And that reason is that the Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America is actually a clone of the same ride from Six Flags Darien Lake. Hold on, let me explain. So here's a section of straight track from the Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America. And here's the exact same piece of straight track on the Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags Darien Lake. Notice the lakes surrounding the straight track. That right there is the exact reason why that piece of straight track is included on the Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America. I believe that Intamin kept this piece of straight track because it would provide a cool sensation of gliding super close to the lake at such a high speed. And that actually would be pretty cool. Think, on a hot summer's day, you're on Superman Ride of Steel, and you're just gliding across the lake with the wind in your face, just feeling like you're flying. I mean, honestly, that would be an awesome experience. Due to the fact that you're doing that straight track and feeling like you're traveling so fast all over a lake. Whereas the Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America is just gliding over grass, which is probably not nearly as fun. And this coaster is an exact clone of the one at Six Flags Darien Lake, or a mirror image of it, same thing basically. But Six Flags just kept the design completely the same, which means that the gliding over the lake is just a piece of straight track now. And when you really sit back and think about it, it makes perfect sense. The gliding over the lake would be a super cool element to add to your coaster. And since the Six Flags Darien Lake version came first, and the Six Flags America version is an exact clone, you have the same piece of straight track. I hope that kind of cleared it up and shed some light why there's that piece of straight track in the middle of this coaster. I do hope I get to ride this soon because I really want to experience it for myself, because it looks to be an awesome coaster. Next time you're riding Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America, when you head over the straight track, just imagine it's water. If you enjoyed the video, then give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, then make sure to hit that subscribe button. That's all I gotta say. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next week.